What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Timmons podcast. I'm your host, Timon. This is my podcast, best podcast in Goshen. I got some business for you. First, check out the YouTube channel. It's on YouTube, and it's called Timmons Podcast. I also have the Dadcast on YouTube as well. Check that out. And follow me on Twitter, Timmons Podcast, and you can email me, timmonspodcast@gmail.com. All right, we're here. Got a great guest for today. I'm not sure if I should say Amanda or Mandy. Which do you go by?
I go by either.
Yeah.
Around here, people know me as Mandy,
Okay.
but I usually introduce myself as Amanda.
Okay. Yeah, Amanda, welcome. And yeah, if I say Mandy or Amanda, just know it's the same thing.
It doesn't matter. I'm used to it.
We go to church together, kind of, and I know your parents as well, and your cousins are my good friends.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Leah. I'll say Katie too, and Aaron. I'm friends with them too, but Leah for sure is Leah's the homie. So, but yeah, I thought it would be great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you
to
so
talk
much.
a little about some of the stuff you're doing. Yeah. Plus, share your story and figure out what your name is. Either it's Mandy or Amanda.
We'll figure it out by the end, right?
Yeah. So welcome. We saw you talk about kind of the stuff you've been doing. We'll get into that at church, and it was awesome. Love what's happening. And we also, Allison and I supported you as you kind of initially made that embarkment into what we'll be talking about. I don't want to reveal it yet. I'll let you reveal it.
All right.
And so, yeah, we're super supportive. We love what you're doing. We loved hearing about it. And so I thought this would be a great avenue to keep talking about it. And you've got more coming. So,
I do. Always moving.
Yeah, moving, shaking. This is good. So let's start out just who are you? Where are you from? Just the basics first, and then we'll get into some of the stuff. So,
Yeah, well, I'm Amanda. Nice to meet all of you. And I am 19 years old, just from Little Goshen, Indiana. And I just recently came back from YWAM, which is the largest sending missions program in the world. It stands for Youth with Mission. And I did a DTS. So there's lots of acronyms. I'll try to explain them as best as I can. DTS was called Discipleship Training School, and it's 6 months that you go to a specific base. There's lots of bases, 400 all over the world.
Yeah.
There's so many. They range from like 5 students to like 300,
Wow.
different ranges for different people and all that stuff. And the first 3 months, you're just training and you're learning more about God and just really having your own breakthroughs. And just
it's like a boot camp kind of.
for real, it
Yeah.
really is, and just like really, it's like a extended summer camp is also kind of like how I explain it, because you live with lots of people, you're like rooming together with everyone, you're in community, and it's just like 7 days a week, just Bible and just talking about God and your relationship with Him and growing and learning, and then you are placed and prayed onto a team. And you go out to the nation. So you're sent out into different teams. And I had the privilege to go to Peru. It was amazing. So many stories. It was amazing. Wouldn't trade it for the world. We were in the jungle for a month. So we were doing like evangelism and ministry, partnering with different churches. And I also like got to just minister to kids and
That's cool.
and see so many different like people and backgrounds. And so that time is
it unreached areas basically?
So ours was unreached.
Okay.
There's different types of outreaches. So there was tour teams, there was unreached, there was kids movements, and the one that I did was specifically unreached. I felt really called to Peru. You pick your top 3 and you pray about them. There's like a big list of all the places that they...
400, whatever, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
not 400. There's like about 20 to 30.
Okay.
400 bases. So we don't necessarily go back to a base on outreach.
Oh, okay.
So we're just going out and we have contacts is what they call them. And they're just locals that have a ministry going and that want to help us and connect us with people locally.
Yeah.
And so then when we're able to do that, we can just like minister to people in a different way than we could through like YWAM. Lots of some people like visit bases while they're on outreach, but most like we didn't.
Oh yeah, so you actually go to a local ministry and then almost like an extension of that ministry while you're there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then they are the ones that are helping you connect with whoever and whatever.
Yeah. In the ministry we were with, it translates, because everything's in Spanish in Peru, it translates to Leaving Footprints.
Oh, cool.
And it's a really amazing ministry that this family does. And so it was so nice and so comforting almost to be like with a family all the time. So our contacts, they were a family, and then their in-laws also helped us in the jungle. They were the ones on the boat with us, cooked for us.
Yeah.
And so we just really felt like taken care of the entire time. And like they were like, we're your parents while you're here. We are going to take care of you. Yeah. It's not just like there are our locals. Like we just really built true friendship with them too, and it was really cool.
You're living life with them. Yeah,
we literally lived in their house.
That's so cool. Yeah, as opposed to going and seeing them like clocking in at work. You know? It's more like you're in it.
It's 24/7. You know.
So YWAM. So let's step back a little bit. How'd you even get connected with YWAM? Because you're Goshen, born and raised, right? Well, not born, but grew up in Goshen. Yeah. And then so you've been in Goshen all your life, basically. And then out of high school, when did you make that decision to go to YWAM?
So from such a young age, I always felt like I wanted to go to the nations. And I wanted to be a missionary. And obviously, at 5 years old, you don't know what that means. But it was really cool because I really believe that God placed that in my heart, just even the word missions from such a young age. And I knew people that had done it in the past. My parents were youth pastors, so lots of connections there with students that would graduate and then decide to do a gap year and then ended up at YWAM.
So they had those, they've seen it, you've watched kind of that path happen a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just was like, this is such an amazing experience for them and for just like the body of Christ and just for people to just hear about Jesus, Yeah. And I decided on the base because of like a mutual friend and just like someone that I kind of knew, like more of an acquaintance. I had seen that she had done it like a year or two before. And like a lot of the people that I knew had done it like way, way, way before.
Right.
And so I was like, this is a credible...
Has just gone through it.
Source.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I ended up going to Hawaii, which people were like, Hawaii missions, really?
But isn't that where it started?
Yeah, it was founded there. And read the book by Lauren Cunningham of like how it started. Oh, now I don't remember the book name.
That's okay.
But it's just like how he got the word for Kona and all these things, and just like how he founded this whole organization, nonprofit, and it's all of the money goes back into missions, and it's so amazing to see like such a like big organization do this and do so much good, and so many people go into it and now are like full-time missionaries, and like they're like, this
that's
is
the jump start right there.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that really you, God?
Yes, that's the book.
That's the book. Read that.
Read it.
That's cool. So, and you hear Kona and hear Hawaii and you hear missions, and people are like, okay, sounds like a vacation.
Yeah, which it definitely isn't. I'll give a little background. You live with 9 roommates.
Wow.
In like a very small room. Like the room is maybe a little bigger than this room right here.
Wow, yeah.
And, that's 5 sets of bunk beds and 1 bathroom for 10 girls, technically, because I'm the 10th.
Oh, wow.
It's an adjustment for sure, especially because it was my first time, like, leaving home for an extended period of time.
Yeah. It's high school, right? And then you went to this, basically.
Yes. And any age can do it, genuinely, like, all ages. Like, we had people in my DTS that were families. I had someone on my team who was like 30. It really doesn't matter. Like they really,
it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Was it primarily younger though?
Primarily the one I did. So this gets into the logistics. Mm-hmm. The discipleship training school I did, those 6 months, there's lots of different schools, and there's different like focuses on the schools, and there's different names for those schools then. Okay. And so you could go to like a surfing one. There's like a surfing one in Byron Bay, Australia.
No way.
Of how like you can evangelize in like your own passions. And the one that I did is called Fire and Fragrance.
Okay.
And it's really geared towards Gen Z revival and Gen Z, all things Gen Z. So it primarily is like 18 to like 25 is the range.
Okay.
And then there's so many quarters always going on. So there's a quarter September, and then there's a quarter in January, and then there's a quarter in April. Because after those 3 months that we're there from September to December, we leave for outreach, a new group comes.
Wow.
You know?
So they're just...
And so then different schools have different ages. So like September's usually younger because it's right
after.
Right after. Yeah. January's primarily like 20 to 25 years old.
Okay.
And then April can be any age, genuinely. All of them can be any age, but that's kind of like what
it just works with their seasons in life, right? So you're just done with school, and now you got your summer ahead of you, and then you go into YWAM, right? So, yeah, that's cool. How many people were at Fire in part of your DTS?
Fire and Fragrance, the one I was a part of, I think it was like 350, 250 or 350, which I know is a big jump, but it's like one of the 50s.
Still a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and that's where you're getting the base for what you're going to do in outreach. So you do 3 months of discipleship training, and then you said 3 months of outreach. So it's a 6 month total is what you're
6 months. And then right after your outreach, you come back to Kona, or you go back to a week of debrief. It depends on like where they place it. You learn a lot about going the flow with YWAM. You don't hear details until like they're set, you know? I love it though. I learned a lot through that. Yeah. Genuinely. Like I like my plan, and I learned to break that box and just go with the flow.
Yeah. That's a growing thing. That's really cool.
And so on that debrief, you go through like different tools, and you have class just like you did while you were in those first 3 months of how to come home and all of these things.
Culture shock.
Culture shock.
What's the reverse? I don't remember what the other one is, because you go in, and then when you leave it, it's also, there's a culture shock coming back.
So many things. And just even like how to get your own oil when you go back home. What are your next steps? Like thinking about this and all of these things, reflecting over your time. Like this is crazy what you went through, and so much happened and so much growth. Like remember to reflect and, you know, just sit in it too.
And understand what God was doing then, what he's doing now. All that fun stuff. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. And so I guess the first step was you decided to go, right? And then you had to do some support raising.
I did.
That's how I first heard about this whole experience. Was you got up in front of the church and mentioned it a little bit about what you're doing. What was that like? Just at the beginning, for those who, let's say I'm a high school student who's like, okay, maybe I do want to do youth the mission. At 18 and support raising sounds really scary. Like it does not sound fun to. That's just for me.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
No one likes asking for money. No one likes asking for help in general. Like in this day and age that we're at, it's a very like
do yourself.
Self generation. Yeah. And for me, I knew I wanted to go, and I knew that this has been like an ongoing thing since I was young, and I was set on this because I didn't know what I wanted to do in high school and college and all that stuff pretty early on. And so this was always in the back of my head, and I knew this came with it. And I knew my biggest thing was, I think, just the determination of like, I'm doing this and I'm not going to back down. And at the time, it was just that determination. But now looking back at it, I knew it was like really God like led me in all of that. You know, God kept me determined and motivated, and kept my eyes focused on what I wanted and what he wanted, where he wanted me to be, because my life would look so different if I wouldn't have done that. Like genuinely, like I said this a little bit in my testimony night, like I went with some big questions. Like I went to figure out my faith for myself. Like you grow up and you go to church. I grew up going to church like every single Sunday, you know, every Wednesday. But having these big questions, sometimes it feels almost a little scary to ask them because you grew up in the church, you know?
Yeah. Like you can't question it. Yeah.
And so, like, I was, like, doubting so many
Is God
things.
real?
Is God real?
Why would you even question that? Get out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're not allowed to go
real.
to church. Yeah.
Like, it was just generally, like, I had to figure out what I believe about God, what I wanted, like, in my faith. And I like to stay away from the word, like, religion, because I think you can get really into, like, nitty-gritties of just, like, you do this and you do this and you do this to please God, which is not what being a Christian is at all.
Yeah.
And so just even learning that from a different lens and different perspective, because when I tell you, my community, my family, best people ever. I genuinely was raised, and I grew up in such an amazing household, family, community, all that stuff. It's something different though, because everyone's breakthrough is at a different moment. We all know this. Like, I learned a lot about this too. Just like, how many times did it take you, like, hearing about God, going to church until you, like, decided, I think I'm ready to get baptized, or I think I'm ready to take this step. I think I'm ready to do this. You know, it's not, like, automatic for everyone.
Yeah. That's funny because when I think I was 23 is when I had, like, I would say, like, a light switch moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Everyone has it different times.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up Christian in the church and stuff, but it's like, oh, this is God.
Yeah.
This is real. You know, and it isn't. There's no way to formulate it. You can't just, like, this is how everyone does it.
It's true.
Yeah. Go through the process. Yeah. That's very cool. So, yeah, you came from that. And then, but the fundraising. So you did that. And was there a lot of kind of stepping out and things like that, just initially starting with the fundraising? Or was it, do you think God just kind of made it all flow? Or
I learned a lot about becoming go with the flow, you know, going to YWAM, but then even that, like, summer, I think I got a lot more, like, relaxed, and I really believe that God just gave me this inner peace about everything. Like, I never was, like, really worked out about finances or moving or being away from home. I think my parents were my mom was freaking out a little bit. She's like, you got 2 months and you've done nothing. But I was like, wow, God gave me this peace. I didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
I was able to reach out to family and friends, because I really believe that if you are fundraising or you're raising support, it's for missions and stuff like that. It is not just money. It is literally them partnering with God and with you to further the kingdom. Like, because not everyone's necessarily meant to be sent to the nations. Not everyone's calling is going to be the same, you know?
Yeah.
And so they can support in different ways through prayer, through finances, through just an encouraging word, and just even having coffee with me. I'm such an extrovert that, like, people pouring into me in that way is as valuable as giving me money or giving me something, because I really believe that God got that. Yeah. I don't have to worry about that. My biggest thing was with support raising and all that stuff was my relationships, and just really, like, genuinely having relationships, because that's trumps anything, you know?
Yeah, and being authentic. And if you're just following God, people catch on to that.
Yeah.
That's a really cool thing.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. And whatever that number is that you have to fundraise, I mean, it's doable. That's the cool thing. I think a lot of people see that number and get worried or scared, or what's the term people use where they just don't feel like they're authentic, or they're not.
They're like fake.
Imposter syndrome, maybe. Have you heard that?
I don't know.
Yeah. It's just like, they're like, I don't know if that's the right term, but I've heard people use that where they're like, I don't feel like I should be here or doing this thing, but God's just making it happen. And God's got this journey for you. He's got a cool journey.
He's the best. And he has the most perfect plan. And I think I learned a lot about that through, like, my life was so different, like, a year from like today, you know? And just seeing how, like, God even prepared me in those times that I wasn't necessarily walking with him really well or pursuing a relationship with him. Like, he was preparing the way, and I was like, that's crazy. Like, he was protecting me, and he was giving me this inner peace that was like, didn't know where it was coming from. I'm like, I don't know why I'm just not freaking out about this like you guys, but I just can't. Like something in me just, like, it'll work out, you know?
That's so cool. That's God's peace for sure.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. So you fundraise, and then you go for 3 months. What was that like? Just like, I mean, it was on Hawaii. It was
Hawaii.
You know.
It's expensive. Like, the base I went to was expensive, but I really believe in that area.
Just the flights.
Just the flights in general. Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
But again, kind of like I said, I lived with so many people and I learned so much through that, of just different personalities and backgrounds and cultures all in one room all the time, Yeah. And I learned a lot about just like dying to self and literally serving the heck out of people, just like serving till it hurts.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it did hurt. Like, something about me is I'm a very clean, neat freak person, in the sense of like, I won't be like rude about it, but I like my stuff like clean. In order, no messes, Yeah. And I learned a lot living with 9 other girls. Yeah. It was crazy.
It probably wasn't clean and in order, I'm guessing.
It was sometimes not.
Yeah.
I learned a lot genuinely from my leader. So the way they do this is you have staff. So there's staff that live in each room. They have to do that. There are commitments for 2 years of staffing, a discipleship training school.
Yeah.
And the first year they have to stay on campus. But in my opinion, that's just me. I would want to stay in both years just because like when you're living with your girls, you can disciple in a different way. You can always be there for a conversation. And so there are you have one in your room, and then you get your outreach team, and then that leader becomes kind of your mentor and disciple person, go-to. And the person in your room is still definitely a disciple person and figure and leader in your life. Yeah. But it's really cool to have that accountability of like 2 people really pouring into you, because it's such a big program, like the one I went to was
100 kids,
350 people.
Right. Yeah. And that 2 pouring in, you can miss the spots that wasn't poured into. That's very cool.
One thing my room staff leader she said was, Amanda, you love serving, and I love that about you. Like, I always was doing the dishes or cleaning up after people. And she's like, but I want you to like think about, and I learned a lot about heart posture, but think about your heart posture when you're doing it. If you want to serve them and you want to love them, do it, because God has gifted you in that. And so I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But then she said, that's not the only thing. But if you're doing it because you're just annoyed and you just like it the way you like it, you just stop doing that, because they're just never going to learn. You know what I mean? Like, people won't learn when it's just like kind of an expectation that you'll do it, because you're like, oh, Amanda's in the room, she'll like pick that up,
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot about just like how to serve with the right heart posture. And how to take bitterness or annoyance out of it and just like love serving.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's deep. I don't think very many people have figured that out.
It's a hard one living in the world we live in, and living
convenience everywhere, and
convenience and comfort and everything, like I said, is about self nowadays. Like, I could get into
it. Do it. Yeah. It's all good. Yeah, I feel you. That's cool. I also, one of the things because as we watched you go to Kona and do the DTS, you go on Instagram every once in a while and just kind of give your thoughts about different things. And I remember, I don't know if you were there for maybe a month or 2, and you got on Instagram and just kind of talked about your testimony, and I saw it as a way of you processing your life up until that point, and then seeing how this world is now impacting your life going forward. I really saw that. It was very cool. But you're just sitting there like, I grew up thinking this and this and this, and I'm realizing that that was good, but it's more like this and this and this, and I thought that was super sweet.
Man, it was quite a thing. So I'll explain kind of why I did those videos.
Yeah.
Very out of my comfort zone to just talk about, like, I grew up in
personal
the church,
stuff.
but personal stuff, and just also like talking about faith, which is weird to say, but as a Christian, like, how many people will like just openly talk about your faith, just online, even if you say you're a Christian, like, it's genuinely like a question to ask.
Well, and usually it's just like a verse in your bio. That's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
And so while you're in Kona, you have to be, okay, your schedule's really packed. When I tell you, like, breakfast is at 6:30 to 7. If you miss it, you know, I did not go to it. I just slept in and ate something else. But then your first thing starts at 8, and then you're busy until the afternoon, until like 4.
Wow.
So you're busy, like you have contending or like a Bible morning or something in the morning, worship, something like that. Then you have class until noon.
Okay.
Then you have lunch, and then you have this thing called, on certain days, your track.
Okay.
And your track is something that you kind of excel at or you're good at. You have your foot in the door a little bit, like maybe you're a good dancer, maybe you're good at singing, and you can really pursue that and use that passion to glorify God and how to like train you in that. And the one I did was called Messengers, and it's all about evangelism.
No, cool.
And in that track, you're pushed a lot. And I wasn't in the tracks to say this, but I think you're pushed a lot more than sometimes the other tracks because of these challenges. So one of the challenges was share your testimony as alive on your social media. And for all, like, when I tell you, people come completely different paths of life. Like, they don't even, their family community doesn't even know they're like Christian or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's really pushing. And then another one was like, share your burning heart message. It's just something that's burning on your heart that you want to share with people.
Wow, that's so good. You're flexing that muscle in a way.
Yeah.
Like, and it's sometimes like,
it's hard.
if you've not worked out before, it is sore. Yeah, to work out that muscle a bit, it is not fun. Yeah.
But I think those few times, and even just like we would get up on a chair and have to share the gospel, or we would do evangelism on Wednesdays in the community. And that was probably harder for me than even doing evangelism in Peru, because these people like live in Kona and know that YWAM's a thing, and they've heard this so many times, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to get discouraged. But again, like, how many times does it take someone?
Yeah.
It's like technically like 7 times for them to hear the gospel fully, for them to accept Jesus. That's like the statistic out there.
Yeah. Well, it's like, before we got on the podcast, I showed the garden, right?
Yeah,
How many times do you have to water something before it pops out of the ground? I don't know. You do it until it does.
You do it until it does. And just like, even this is, though, like using those muscles and doing this while in Kona for me just really, really set me up well for outreach. In the sense of like, public speaking was not a problem. Talking about my faith was still a little uncomfortable, but you got used to it doing it every single day in Peru. And like, even we had, the layovers are always crazy when you're trying to get to your location, your nation. We had one in LA, and it was a long enough one that we met up with people. Basically, if you're in the YWAM world, everyone's somehow connected. I just don't know how it works. But we met up with, there are some influencers that are like Christian influencers, and they're like TikTokers and stuff.
Okay.
But they're like evangelizing, and they're like, mission field is the party scene in just LA, because LA is literally like unreached.
Wow.
It's insane when you go there. And I remember the first time, like, it was like first time on outreach technically, because we had left Kona.
Yeah.
That someone's like, you need to go find someone and share the gospel. It was in Air One. Do you know what Air One is?
No.
Air One is like an expensive, bougie, like celebrities go there to shop.
Oh, wow.
Because it's like cool to shop there. So like Hailey Bieber would shop there.
Gotcha.
And it's like, milk is $10.
Yeah.
It was
it's the
very
Gucci
scary.
Store. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
To do that. And so like those things and pushing me, again, like seeing God's provision and him preparing me for what's to come.
Did you get a little rejection from the outreach and stuff?
You get rejection every day, you know?
Yeah.
And then I remember one of the speakers, that's how they do your class, is like a speaker for like a week. One of the speakers said that how many times, like, we get more rejections than we get like crazy stories like this. Yeah. But the reason why you have these crazy stories is because you do it even more. So like the more you fail, the more you'll have more cool stories and like amazing times that God met you and God met these people. And so just trying and failing and obedience is the key, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. If you don't even try, you don't even have those experiences.
Yeah, and if you don't try, you can't even be like, oh, I can't see any of those crazy things happen. I can't even, like, that doesn't happen in my world. And I'm like, well, you're not trying. That's the biggest thing. And I even learned that myself.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we talked a little bit about even before the podcast was just how YWAM was a totally different world.
Yes.
Than, coming from Goshen. What was that like?
It was really cool to see people so just undone by Holy Spirit meeting them. I was very fortunate to grow up, and even though like maybe not the church I went to or anything like that was this charismatic, but my parents were very Holy Spirit led, and it doesn't always click for you as a kid, you're like, oh, my parents are crazy or something like that, But my parents always talked about Holy Spirit, and it was really cool for me to see Holy Spirit move in a different way while in Kona and see him meet people in ways that you can't even explain, you know what I mean? Like you can't fathom. And so for me, it was almost just like comforting, and like a lot of my time in Kona was just what's the word? Like it was confirming everything I grew up with.
Wow. And
it was a comforting thing, which I know it sometimes can freak people out and it can be scary. And it's
weird,
different, But for me, it was comforting, and I really think God did that on purpose because he's like, you're in the right place. There's nothing to be worried about. And it was crazy. Even like while I was going to Peru, someone texted me randomly on like Instagram and was like, hey, I'm thinking about like last minute going to YWAM, and I saw you did it. Like, and she had a lot of concerns about how charismatic it was. And I said, the biggest thing is just pray and lean into what God says. Like, genuinely, like, he'll give you the right answer, and he's going to resolve all those questions in your mind, and you're just giving them to him will just really take that off you. And she ended up going and loving it.
That's cool.
So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's so cool.
To see her and actually meet her, and like on my debrief, I got to meet her because she was in the other quarter.
She was in the midst of it at that point, I'm sure, right? Or maybe near the end of her DTS, right? I would guess, or maybe
my end of my DTS. She was about to go to outreach.
Oh wow!
So it was really cool.
That's cool.
Like I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy.
That's sweet. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, God will let you know. Yeah, he's big enough.
I think the biggest thing is like we have a lot of questions and we have a lot of things, but just giving it to God first. And I learned a lot about the power of prayer while on outreach, and just like, again, like I said, his perfect plan and his provision is really cool to see. And it's with so much prayer, like prayers move mountains. And we saw this multiple times in different villages, that we would just pray for people. We would have like altar calls at the end of a service or some event or anything. And we'd pray for them in English because we obviously all don't know Spanish. I know a little bit, but I want to be fluent soon.
Yeah.
And we'd pray for them, and these girls I'd be praying for, like 6 or 7 years old, they'd be sobbing in my arms.
Wow.
And it's just really amazing to see Holy Spirit meeting them. Like, no one else can do that but God. Like, God becomes...
They can't understand what you're saying, but they feel it.
Yes.
God's pouring through.
Like,
that's so cool.
Their spirits understand, and they're like, this is safe, this is right. And that all comes from prayer, that they don't understand, like, the language, you know?
That's so cool. What were the 3... So, Peru was one of the 3 that you chose. What were the other 2 that you were thinking about?
So I really felt called to go to Latin America or Spanish-speaking country. I think a lot of that comes from just growing up in this area. Yeah. Like I went to Goshen, and my school was like more than half Hispanic and Mexican. So
the culture is there. You kind of are familiar with it. Yeah.
And it just
kind of a cool blessing to be from here.
Yeah, it really is. Like, people are like, Indiana.
Yeah.
What's in Indiana? Genuinely, I had so many people ask, where is Indiana? And I had to explain it. I was like, it's by Michigan. Chicago, yeah.
Have you heard of corn? It all comes from there.
Basically. And that, it was so funny. There were so many stories about that. But I had Peru and then South Africa. South Africa was definitely, God put me in Peru for a reason. Definitely South Africa was just, you think of missions, you think of Africa.
Yeah.
I was like,
sweet to visit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the teams were amazing. And I had one of my roommates, she went to South Africa and it was amazing for her. And then my third was Colombia.
Oh, wow.
And actually, man, this is crazy to think about. I haven't thought about this and talked about it in a while. But I was originally placed on the Colombia team.
Oh, wow.
So something about YWAM is they really, really love and push and what's the word? Encourage young leaders. And so your leaders, my leaders that led me to Peru were my age, 19. It's crazy. Leading.
Whip, right? Maybe, yeah. Just to empower.
Yeah.
Yeah, the young people to do, right. It's not a 40-year-old taking you. It's someone your age leading your group with people maybe even older than them, right? Yeah.
And it's really cool to see that. And so I kind of found out that I was supposed to be on the Colombia team, and I was like, wow, that would have been amazing. I knew more people on that team. Genuinely, the Peru team, I didn't know anyone on that team. God did that on purpose, And I also knew the leaders really well. And so it was...
On the Colombia team, you knew?
On the Colombia team.
Okay, yeah.
And so at the beginning, I was just a little, man, why am I on this other team, And I really had to just give it to God and just learn to trust, which has always been something that, I like everything in order. So control is sometimes hard for me. And it was good I was not on that team because that's not the team I was supposed to be on. My relationships with the leaders would have been a lot different going forward, And then the team I was on, my leaders were exactly what I needed, and the people on my team were exactly what I needed. I was on a team with a lot of people very different from me, super different, not very blunt or just personality differences. Most of my team is introverted. It was fun. I loved my team.
Yeah.
But it was a new experience to learn and just really submit to leadership in a new way. And it was really cool to see, one time we did these things that we had, a hospitality group on our team. Everyone had kind of a role.
Yeah.
I was finances.
No way.
It fits with, everything I love.
Planning and control and everything in this place.
For real. I knew where all the expenses were going.
Yeah.
But the hospitality team would pray over the team and ask for God to say, is it supposed to be one person's team day? And that was just a day. It was their birthday. But at the end of the day, we would pray for them and prophesy over them and just encourage them, and we'd voice memo it. And I remember one of my leaders saying to the 30-year-old on my team, it shows your maturity how you submit to leadership while I'm 19 and you're 30. And I was it was a light bulb moment in the sense of it really does. You're gonna be in so many different seasons and jobs, people older and younger than you that are gonna be in leadership. They had their time to staff. This is some background. You have to do 3 months before even discipleship training starts, and it's called leadership track, and it's all about being a leader.
Yeah.
And so they had their time for learning and growing. This is not their time. This is their time for leading, because God has anointed each of my leaders for that. And I learned a lot through that, and just it was really amazing. I loved my leaders, and I learned so much from them.
That's cool. Did you just recently post pics of your leader?
That was my room leader.
Okay, that was your room leader. Okay. And was she going to be the leader in Colombia? Or no?
No.
Totally different.
Her best friend, who was probably my closest YWAM friend.
Yeah.
The one that I connected with the most when it came to staff.
She was going to be the Columbia leader.
She was the Columbia leader.
That's wild.
And then, actually, we were just talking about Catan.
Yeah.
One of my Catan buddies, he was the guy leader.
Oh, cool.
I bought the game Catan while out there because I missed it so much. And I would play it at the coffee shop all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's fun. Yeah, Catan's definitely like a lot of people around here play Catan.
Oh, yeah. I love
Christian, in the Christian circles.
And a lot of Norwegians and lots of Swedish people do too.
No way.
But it's called something different because of copyrights. It's called like, oh man, what is it called? I put it on my story one time as like, what do you call it? Because some people call it Catan, some people call it Catan.
Yeah.
Some people say settlers.
Yep.
Colonists.
Oh.
So it's an online version. It's called Colonists.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, that's great.
But it was really cool because everyone knew the game.
Yeah.
Mainly guys, though. It was just kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
'Cause-
yeah. I don't know if that's just a I don't know, a generic thing.
I don't know, but like mainly like I find some girls to play sometimes, but it's
Majority
usually the
dudes.
guys that are like, "Oh my goodness, I love that game." I was like, "Come play."
Let's do it. That's
I
great.
had a little group. It was fun.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, and remind you a little bit of home, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure.
Which is nice. So yeah, tell me about Peru.
Oh.
Tell me about like that. Yeah, and let's
It was amazing.
Let's end your first quarter. What was something amazing that happened before you went to Peru? What was like a big high God moment?
Let me think. You know, everything goes together for you.
No, yeah.
I'm really thinking. There
That's
was
okay.
so many.
You don't have to do it. We can go to Peru.
Okay, I'll think about it
Yeah.
while I'm talking, and
when you come back to it.
We'll come back to it because
Perfect.
there was definitely, I something about me is I'm very much like I reflect and see things after. So I'm not necessarily like I learned a lot about like you don't necessarily need to feel something to be in the same spiritual place. Like it's not a comparison game.
Yeah.
And so for me, like it wasn't
Yeah.
like I felt this really cool thing. But now that I'm thinking about it, there was one time, it was actually, we had like prayer sets and contending times either in the afternoon or morning every single day. And it was the afternoon one and it was for South America. And it was crazy. Just God like broke my heart for South America. And I think it really was like a turning point of like falling in love with like Latin America almost and like Spanish speaking countries and just like the warm culture and everything. And that was just an amazing moment. People prayed for me and it was really cool.
That's awesome.
So now I think about it, that was one of the moments that was really amazing.
Very highlight. That's very
But
cool.
I think community overall was like really cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah, something totally different that you've probably not experienced before.
Oh yeah.
And just like, yeah.
A bunch of like young people crazy on fire for God, you know?
Yeah, you don't see that very often. It's just so sad.
It's really sad.
That's very cool to hear. So yeah, Peru. So tell me so you prayed, you're on it. Are you training for that while you're still in your training before you get released?
So we have different, like our schedules set up that we have like small groups and different team times that our leaders set up.
Okay.
And so we would do some contending times for that and just pray. And a lot of it was prayer. And it was really cool. I'll tell a little bit of like some stories in a little bit, but to see those like come to fruition and stuff. And then we also did like, depending on if you were unreached or tours team or kids movements, you were on different training sessions in the morning for that. And that was really good. And we learned a lot about different like religions and what the difference in religion is because it's Catholicism. So we had people talk about that and we learned about like if it's shame, honor, you know, different things about that.
Just cultural stuff about what you're about to go to. Just some basics.
Just some basics.
Yeah.
It was very much like, I think doing the program I did, Fire and Fragrance, DTS, because it's large scale, you get what you try to get out of it. You know, you could totally fly under the radar and not attend certain things or, you know, and you wouldn't get as much out of it. And so my leader in my room did an amazing job of just like raising us higher. She's like super prophetic in the sense of like she had a dream that like a few of us would be late to something, and we were late even though she even told us about the dream.
No way.
And like one day I knocked her coffee over or something in the tent where we have class one day, and I was like, I'll buy you coffee sometime. I was not a morning person at all until I had to start going to 5 a.m. workouts because of my team.
Yeah.
And I got up earlier one time than her, got coffee, and she said, look at this. And it was in notes. She had a dream that night that I'd buy her coffee.
No way.
Crazy.
That's cool.
But like, I think that's the biggest thing about like, you get what you try to get out of something. And so those were all of the training that we did going to Peru, and just like lots of prayer. I think the biggest thing was just we prayed. Yeah. Prayed and contended. I was very fortunate. My leaders, both very musical. So we had really great prayer sets and amazing times.
That's cool. Mm-hmm. Setting the atmosphere.
Oh, yeah. For real. And setting the culture of just like prayer and worship. Like sometimes teams fall apart when you don't worship. Like, you know, if you don't have a time that you're worshiping and you're just communing with God and just thanking Him in everything, like just reflecting over your day, like it can really tear your team apart.
That's so true. Yeah. Because then you're both on equal ground and you've been, as a team, remembering.
Yeah, focus. Eyes back on God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then do you go to Peru? Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
The first few weeks we were in the city, in Iquitos, and we would partner with different ministries in different like churches. And a lot of our ministry, I like to say, like, sometimes people get missions is just converting people, which is definitely not true. Like, we are called to make disciples, and we are called to go and commune and be in relationship and love people, and the hungry ones will come. Like, we are not forcing anything on people, but we're just opening up the door, bringing opportunity for something that could change their lives, you know?
Yeah. Shining your light. Mm-hmm. Yeah, shining the light. So.
Yeah, for real. And so we would do lots of door-to-door, which is literally just what it means. Going door to door, going house to house.
Wow.
And just knock on the door, and we'd have different translators. 2 people on my team grew up in South America, so that was really nice. And then we had 2 others from Iquitos that knew English that were translators. So we'd split up in teams and go out and just pray for people, encourage people. Something I learned about the prophetic is starting, like if you're like, oh, I really want to grow in that or whatever, start with encouraging people every single day. It's such a great start to that. And those encouragements and prayer and just being in the Word every single day and really having your eyes on Jesus and communing with Him, talking to Him will really just bring out that gift.
Yeah.
Little side note.
No, that's something so real. Is like, and I think about that sometimes too when the enemy attacks. You think about these mental things, and you're like, if it's not encouraging, it's not from God.
It's true.
Because part of God's character is He's an encourager. He wants to encourage you. And so when you look at all of the fruits of the Spirit, those are all beautiful things. Like if you have joy, that's from God.
Oh, yeah.
If you have love, that's from God. And so encouragement is just something so easy you can do.
It's so simple. Yeah. It does not take that much to encourage someone.
Yeah. And that's from God.
Yeah.
And it sounds so, I don't know, elementary, but I think a lot of times we forget that. It's like that's 100% is God. It just wants to encourage His people, and you get to be that mouthpiece sometimes.
Yeah.
And
we're literally
no matter what,
just the vessel. Like literally all glory and the stories or the testimonies that we come up with and we see are just to glorify God. And just like the reason why I share them and I want to be on the podcast is all for God. Nothing to do with like, I just love talking about myself, you know. I genuinely like want people to know that God can change their lives even if you have a bajillion questions, because we all do, you know?
Yeah, and I'll say this: no one has it figured out.
No one does.
No one does.
They're really good at faking it, but they don't.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. They're very good at faking it. So that's a cool thing. So you would just go around and encourage, and
encourage and pray for people. If we had a word for them, we would do a lot of original design prayers. So we just pray and ask God for a word for this person and just speak into their life. And it was really crazy to see, like, we'd have them translate it, and then their like friends would be like, how did you figure that? How'd you know that? And so, like, even things like that, like, they're like, how did you know that about me, you know? And if they...
There's probably stuff that was, like, way off the wall, too. Like, what does panda have to do with you, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, why am I thinking panda?
It's true. Like, it was crazy to, like, get a word for someone and say it and ask God, like, why? Or if he doesn't want to say a why, that's okay. Just telling him that word. And it'll click for them even if they don't see it in that moment. It could click for them in a few years. You know, like, God is crazy when it comes to the time thing, you know.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that Kyle from Mission 72, the church that we both, well, I attend, you semi-attend, or who knows what, but he talks about a lot about Kool-Aid. And so, like, that word is your packet of Kool-Aid. And the more water you put in there, the less that Kool-Aid's going to taste like Kool-Aid. And sometimes we want to explain that word that we feel like, and it's like, doesn't make sense to us. So we'll sit there and explain. What you're doing
water
is
it down.
Watering it down. It's not as potent. And sometimes you just need to say that word, and who knows? And the other thing Kyle says a lot, and I love this, is the creative. The God speaking box where God's speaking to you is right next to the creative box. Sometimes it's just
true.
imagination. I'm thinking my imagination, but
yeah.
it could be God speaking, you know, and you just throw it out there, and if it sticks and is impactful, that's how you start learning and flexing that muscle, that God muscle is understanding.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love encouragement. So that's so, I'm glad to hear you guys are doing
that. It was amazing. And so we just pray for people. We would split up a lot. Like, a lot of our ministry was kids ministry and then women's ministry. So all us girls, there was 9 girls on my team and 6 boys. Guys, come do YWAM. I'm genuinely saying, like, we need more guys in the mission field because it's just really, they're very outnumbered.
Yeah.
And then the guys would do kids ministry. And so when we were praying the first day, genuinely, like, the first day, we were in, like, kind of the slum area of Iquitos. And we were praying for this lady who said she had, like, some like, pain in her wrist or hand or something. And she was healed just from our prayer. And then all of a sudden she's like, I want a Bible, like, I want to know more, like, I strayed away from my faith, but I want to come back. And those stories are as impactful as seeing someone give their life to Jesus for the first time, you know, like, to see someone come home.
She saw the real power of God. Yeah, and interacted with it. And it wasn't you guys, it was just God doing something cool.
Literally God just doing it. First day we were like, this is crazy, like, this is insane. Like, our leaders were even like, this is an anointed group of people that were an anointed area, you know. And the crazy thing about that was our leader, while in Kona, like, in their, like, staff, they had prayer times all the time, lots of staff meetings. He was prayed over, and someone said that someone was going to get their hand healed.
Wow.
And it was really cool to see that happen first day of ministry.
So cool. Yeah, that's so cool. So you spent a couple weeks doing door-to-door stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Door-to-door and just partnering with churches.
Yeah, and getting kind of into the culture.
Yes.
Right.
Just getting to know our contacts, all of that stuff. And, like, with partnering with churches, we do some, like, church events, all that stuff, all that jazz.
Yeah.
And then, come January, we went to the jungle.
So this was how long after you'd been in Peru?
About 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
Okay.
2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks, 2.5.
Okay. Yeah. Go to the jungle.
Just enough to get acclimated to hearing Spanish 24/7 and already new things, you know.
Yeah.
We're not
Baño,
used to.
I know where that's at. Right, yeah. Right, St. Louis.
And we go, and we're on this big boat. It's like this really long, elongated boat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we, like, our mode of transportation. But then we, like, camp. We're in tents the entire time.
Wow.
Slept on the floor for a long time, you know.
Oh, wow.
And I thought this, and, you know, this is just me thinking, you know, your imagination's crazy or what you think. I was like, oh, we'll just be, like, camping like usual in the grass. But we were always under, like, a roof because of how much it rained, which would make sense.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
And the first 2 weeks, our leaders really felt the word primitive. That was our word. So our first 2 weeks was primitive outreach and primitive tribes and communities, going really far back in the jungle. As much as our boat allowed, because our boat's kind of big and the river was really low. So we had some...
Two combo thing there, yeah. Yeah, you can only go so far. Yeah.
And also, our gas was almost out in the sense of, like, we wouldn't get back. And, like, so I remember our leaders telling us that our contacts had said to them, we don't know, like, we are, like, kind of limited on gas. We don't know how much farther we can get up the river. There's another community about an hour away. Like, we were 8 hours out already. 8 or 9 hours. Do you want to go farther? And we went farther, and by the grace of God, we did, because the river rose before we left, like, a foot or two.
Oh, wow. So you were able to make it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's crazy.
And then we were with that community for a week.
Oh, wow.
Because that was the farthest back we went, and we really felt, in these communities, the culture's very different, in the sense of women don't speak. Eye contact's, like, not a thing, I guess. I don't know. And the men are the only ones that know Spanish and the tribal language. So, like, Uraina is the tribal language. Okay. The women know that, but they don't know Spanish.
Wow. So you can't even really talk to them.
Yeah, we were translating from, like, a bunch of languages.
Wow. Wow. So, yeah, you would go Spanish to them, and then they would say that to the wife, and the wife can't even, it's not allowed to speak.
Yeah.
Not allowed to look. Ugh.
And also, this community was really, really, really poor. And most of the community just lived off this drink called masato. And it is fermented yuca, which is kind of like a potato.
Yeah.
And sweet potato. It is basically like it doesn't taste like beer, but it's like it has like an effect of alcohol.
Yeah.
It's more like sour mucus. Is what, yeah.
That's what it tastes like. Yeah.
But everyone lived off this, so like everyone was just drunk all the time, which really was really like hard for our ministry and just missions in general. We're just trying to talk to people, and also life is so much simpler in the sense of like the men go and work and the women are just home with the kids, you know?
Yeah, in the hut. I'm guessing. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was a really stretching time for my team. And a lot of, even we had to pray. Like, we did just a lot of prayer there. Because they didn't have an established church. There was a few leaders that really were wanting a church. And so it was really cool to see that happen and, like, their want for that grow, like, so from God. Because something crazy is, our contacts were really, like, amazed we got into this, like, we were accepted, because tribes have to accept you into the community. And 8 years before, they had tried to come to this same community, and all of the men lined up on the hill with their machetes and wouldn't let anyone in.
Oh, wow. Because
our contacts have been doing, like, ministry for a long time, and doing, like, river ministry, too.
Yeah.
And so it was cool to see, like, we, like, prayed so much for God to pave the way and tribes to accept us. And we were able to, the last night, we had a altar call. And I don't even remember, like, the number doesn't really matter, but a lot of people came up for it and prayed the like prayer and accepted Jesus for the first time.
Oh, that's so
We
cool.
were able to distribute Bibles, SD Bibles, even though they're like really poor. Somehow they have phones, you know.
Wow. Some like micro SDs.
Yes, like the little SDs that don't fit in iPhones, but they fit in like
Androids.
Samsung Androids, you know.
Yeah.
And we would just hear in the community throughout the week, people just listening to the Bible. We taught them how to do like Bible studies and be in community with people, because that's the biggest, like one of the biggest things about like we learn together and like talking about the Bible together.
Yeah.
And we're able to like do that in their language. So it was like the Uraina language, the New Testament Bible.
Was it in their language? Mm-hmm. No way.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh, shout out to the translators who ever did that. That's so sweet.
So funny to find out our contact had been a part of that team.
Really?
Yeah.
Who translated it?
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. Yeah. Yeah. And then to see that come to fruition.
Yeah.
Like to get those Bibles in their hands.
Get the Bibles in their hands, to see them like really be touched by God's love in a new way. And just a lot of the women, like a lot of the families in general, like the men or the women would leave like the family and just leave the kids. Like there was some orphans that just were taken care of like by an older sister in the community around. Wow. And there was some families that the men had left for another women in their work or something. And
wow.
And because women don't work there, they just didn't have anything.
Wow.
And just to see how the power of prayer and just pressing in and encouraging them and sharing something that could change their life and they're not alone can really just change the way they're like looking at you, because they'd start looking at you and it was not common for them to even look at you or like
or smile. Yeah.
No smiles until like we were praying for them and they just felt so loved.
Wow.
And that this is like something that God wants for them. Like they're so loved and not forgotten ever.
Wow. And you talked about 8 years before the men lining up with machetes. Did you have any experiences like that throughout your whole time in Peru? Like it's kind of scary, rough?
I'm trying to think. No, I don't think so, which is kind of funny because we did find out, it was a little ironic that when we were going, you know, like the president was in jail and there was like riots going on southern Peru, so like in Cusco and all those areas. But God really protected us and we didn't see anything crazy when it came to like violence. We did experience in that specific village the demonic a little bit, and so we had to pray a lot through that. We did a whole afternoon of just praying through and casting things out where we felt, and even praying like where we were sleeping and blessing that place. And
was it just like an oppression?
Like an oppression, and also like there was a few of our teammates that had seen things in the night.
Oh, wow.
And so we were just praying that away. And we were also all having trouble sleeping in this village. And after we had that afternoon of praying and just really like bringing everything back to Jesus and, you know, realigning our hearts and everything, I think everyone slept fine the rest of the time we were there. And so it was power of prayer again, you know?
Yeah. That's so cool.
And just even remembering like our authority in Jesus. Like,
he's numero uno.
Yeah, he's literally. And like, if you're scared or you have fear, it's literally attack from the enemy. Like, it's nothing from God. God would never, because like saying even the name Jesus, you know, demons are scared of. So
no fear comes from God. Like, that's not his MO. He's encouragement, love, like the good stuff, not the bad
fruits
stuff.
of the Spirit, right?
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's awesome. You did the slideshow at our church, and I saw all the cool little like the animals and the different things, and it was powerful to see that picture of the women smiling.
Yes, like when I tell you, like I put that on there and I completely forgot they were smiling.
Yeah,
they did not smile. Like genuinely did not smile ever.
That's so cool.
And then that picture was like popped up. I was like, oh my goodness, I forgot they smiled in this picture.
Yeah. How long were you doing river ministry?
We were there for a month.
Okay.
So then after that specific community, so the first 2 weeks primitive, the second 2 weeks were in a reserve, which again, God provided a way for us to get in this reserve because like everyone's like, how'd you get in the reserve?
Wow.
Because it was like they don't let people in the reserve. It's just the biggest thing. So we were with 3 different communities over those 2 weeks. They were bigger. The second one had internet.
Nice.
And that was good to just say, I'm alive, guys. You know,
Hey, Mom, Dad.
It's kind of crazy how far back, though. People have phones and, like, internet. Cell reception, like, on our travel days, we'd have cell reception.
On the river? No way. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little scary. It's scary to be that connected.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It was good for me to not be connected and see everything. And then those 3 communities, we did a lot of kids ministry. Lots and lots of kids.
Yeah.
And even coming out of that primitive stage of our time in the jungle, it was really interesting because our team, like, that was a lot. It was very heavy, a lot for us to all deal with. We were all very young, you know, most of us.
Yeah.
And God just really encouraged us. He's such an encouraging God, and I think that's something I always want to, like, bring up when I'm sharing about my experience, because we went to this, like, as we traveled to the reserve, we went to a few different places and stayed a few nights, or we would stay for an afternoon, you know?
Yeah.
And one of the places we stayed for, like, 2 nights, they just opened their area and their community up so well to us.
Wow.
The pastor was, like, sobbing and was like, we've been praying for missionaries to come here.
No way.
They made us duck one day and, like, a big meal, and we were, like, running out of food, so it was great.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so just seeing, like, how God encouraged us in that moment, like we're not doing this alone, and there's, like, these Christ followers that really wanted to pour into us too, you know, like, while we were on outreach, like, our leaders talked about how outreach is as much for us as it is for the nations and for others.
Yeah.
Because we're still growing too.
Yeah.
You never stop
God's
growing.
speaking to you as he's speaking to them at the same time. Oh, that's so cool. So you do that for a month, then do you go back to ministry back in the first place you were at?
Yes, we were in different communities in, like, different ministry locations, like churches. So I don't remember how many. It was so many. But we were with, like, church for, like, a week. And then we would go into a different church, and we would be a lot with the youth and kind of helping them and equip them for evangelism, which was
cool.
so fun for me.
Yeah.
And
I remember seeing an Instagram post of, like, you're at a church with a youth group and they were worshiping.
Oh my goodness.
That was cool.
That was amazing. Again, God is such an encourager. The week before that happened, like, everyone got sick. It was so bad. It was so bad. 2 people went to the hospital.
Wow.
Like, it was so bad. Like, I was sitting in my hammock. I slept in my hammock, like, the rest of my time in Peru when we came back from the jungle because of, like, sleeping situations.
Yeah.
I just liked it better.
Yeah.
Us girls, we moved into, like, smaller area.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was like, oh, I like my hammock.
Yeah.
You know? And I was, like, sitting in my hammock, and all of a sudden, one of my room teammates, she, like, fell on the ground, and she, like, fainted.
Oh,
we
wow.
Like, oh, no. And so we were all sick. Like, everyone got sick. And then this Friday night, like, when it was, like, the last, that Friday before our last week in Peru, we went to this church and just had an amazing time. And it just felt like home, you know? He was just encouraging us. They sang songs. They, like, asked for songs that we knew that were in Spanish. So it was really cool to, like, sing songs that we knew, technically.
But in Spanish.
And it pushed us, I think, a lot for that last week. Because, you know, at the end of a trip, you're always ready to go home. And your body just knows what's coming. You're ready for debrief to see your friends that you connected with.
Yeah.
But it was perfect timing. God's timing's the best.
That's so cool. And so then that ends, and then you go to debrief, right? One of the things that I thought was kind of interesting, cool when I saw your slideshow is you lived on that boat, basically. The boat that you took.
We did all of our meals there. Mm-hmm. We would sleep
It's just
up there.
a boat. It's like a big pontoon, but thinner. If that makes sense.
Just a really, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a yacht. It's not like a.
Nothing
I'm trying
crazy.
to tell the listeners, it's just a long boat.
Yeah.
They just.
And then there's like a little bathroom. In the bathroom, let me tell you about the bathroom. The bathroom is the only bathroom with a seat on it, which is amazing because I hate squatting,
Yeah.
And so you use the bathroom, and then you get a bucket from the river and dump it down, and then it'd flush, which is great. But then the pipe just goes out the boat, and guess where we did our laundry and we bathed
in the water.
In that water, in the river. And so it was like a great experience to just really be stripped away from everything, every comfort. And the only thing you could do is rely on God. Like, if you're upset at someone, take it to God. Heart posture was a big thing. If you had a really bad day, take it to God. You didn't have anything else. You didn't have escapes like you usually do, like on your phone or
Netflix or
going to a coffee shop. That was like my escape, you know? Yeah.
That's crazy. So, it was going to God was the, wow.
And it was really good for me.
That's cool. Yeah, a huge growing experience, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, no, I when you'd mentioned that in your slideshow, I was like, that's just wild.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild.
We did eat really well. I will just say, like, genuinely, our contacts had, like, some staff or some crew people, and it was just, like, friends of theirs that did the navigation of the boat and helped drive, and then 2 cooks.
Oh, that's cool.
So we had all of our meals prepared, which was different. Outreaches are always different, so some outreach teams cooked all their meals, or some outreach teams were staying in Airbnbs. They're really nice. It just like really depends.
Yeah. It's not a one size fits all. This is how everyone does it. It's probably totally different depending on.
And it was really cool to see how everyone's outreach was exactly what they needed. Like, genuinely, like, if I would have gone on a different outreach, it would have not, like, it wouldn't have been what I needed. Like, it wouldn't have benefited me the way God wanted me to be impacted and changed.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So then you do the debrief.
Yeah.
Come home. You debrief. How long is that? Just a couple of days or
it's a week.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of an exhausting week because you're trying to catch up with like a bajillion people.
Yeah.
And you want to sit down with them for 5 hours and talk to them,
Yeah.
But it was really cool to see how priorities and boundaries came in place. Just like pouring into people, but also making sure you have your own time to reflect.
Yeah. Both. That's very interesting. Yeah. It's good to know that. It's good to experience that. Then you come home, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Then I came home.
Oh, man.
That first week, I genuinely loved being home. That first week was so bad when it came to my sleep schedule because time change killed me.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going from, what, is it 5 hours different?
6.
5
hours when time change, because they don't have time change there, which is weird.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But 6, so it's 1 in the afternoon right now, because it's 7 p.m. right now.
So you get home and it's like everyone's going to bed at 11, and you're like, it's 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock. It's time to rage. This is when I just get started typically.
It would genuinely like was so hard, and I think it was also just because my body's like, wow, I'm home for a little bit, finally just can chill.
Yeah.
I had my room to myself. It was amazing. I got to see my family.
Toilet that flushes not into the water.
For real. A really nice shower where I don't have to wear shower shoes.
Oh, yeah. The good stuff. Yeah.
For real.
What was the hardest thing about coming home?
For me, I genuinely think, again, because I like always think of things like way after the fact, and I reflect on things. I'm a late reflector, Yeah.
Takes a while to process.
For me,
Yeah.
Probably community is so different here. And that's okay. Like, genuinely, like, I think there's a reason for that, and God wants me to find my own community here. And it was really crazy. So I am in the middle of church shopping. And I go to multiple churches, and I really do believe, like, I have different church homes in different places, but I just want to find a church for me that's just my own, you know? And I was like really not looking forward to it because first off, I'm not married, so I'm like just going by myself and my family's not going with me. And I was like, should I just watch something online this Sunday? And I saw a TikTok and it was like, if you're thinking about skipping church today, and I was like, okay, I'm going to church. But
that's my sign.
For real, I think community is a lot different here because you're not in a YWAM bubble, and you're back in reality, and you're back in there's some
comfort
culture shock
and normal that you've grown up with.
Culture shock, and also like where we're from. When you think of Indiana, you don't think like I won't get into a lot like politics, but like you don't think like liberal, but like where we are is like a little liberal pocket, you know?
It is, yeah.
And so it was just like really crazy to come all back to this. And I think it's amazing though, because I think this is where I'm supposed to be for this time. Yeah. And I'm gonna learn so much.
Yeah. Goshen's great because I've always thought this was great because you have it's liberal, and it's not very liberal, but there's definitely a liberal vibe here. Then you got the Amish.
It's
like, yeah.
So many people have things wrong about the Amish in YWAM. They're like, the Amish or Mennonite, and I'm like, you don't know anything.
You know. There are levels to this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have no clue what's going on until you live in it. But
it's true.
It's cool. It's cool to have those two vibes, and I think that makes Goshen healthy in a way. You know,
it really does.
You need that.
And I think also like I loved growing up here, and I grew like I went to YWAM, and actually my second cousin and then someone I met because she went to YWAM, we all like flew together down in September. So they became friends of mine, and it was really interesting to hear them talk about like Goshen. And I genuinely like they're not the biggest fan of Goshen, that's okay.
Yeah.
I genuinely like fell more in love with Goshen, like being away from Goshen.
Yeah. I did the same thing when I grew up here, and then I left. I'm like, actually, this is not a bad spot.
It's really not like
enjoy it.
I don't necessarily feel called to Goshen at the moment right now, but if I get married and I end up settling down here, that's okay with me because I really think, again, community is a really big part of raising a family and all that stuff. And my community, my family's here, so
yeah, it's a good community.
Wherever I go, I'll go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's wrap it up, but I want to know about what you're going to do and tell the people about that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's spend time on that.
So at the moment, I'll say a little quick thing. At the moment, I'm working 2 jobs. Such a fun time. I'm working at View Rail, Stair Supply, on the floor. Counting our days. We gotta love it. But then on the weekend, on Fridays, I'm working at Big Brothers Big Sisters for an internship. And I really felt like this time is a time of discipline, just getting me into a good schedule and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then what I will be going back to is I really felt called to go back to Kona, and I will be going back end of June for leadership track, and that's the track you do to staff the DTS.
Cool.
But you don't have to necessarily staff it.
Yeah, but it's the same track that all the leaders will be. Yeah.
And I felt called for that, to that in the sense of just like preparing myself for this next season that I'll talk about, and then also just being back in my community. And I was praying actually like on debrief, quick little story, on debrief about like God just revealed to me like something about the number 3 or 6, like 3 months I go back or 6 months, you know? And I was praying about it. I was like, just reveal something this week, you know? And I was talking to my roommate, and she was talking about how she really missed her job. This girl got it 3 weeks after she left for Kona.
Oh, wow.
But then she quit 3 weeks before she was supposed to come back. And, like, the time frame was, like, both 3 weeks. She's like, crazy, the number 3. And then I literally, like, it was probably the most clear I've ever felt God, like, nudging me. Like, this is your sign.
Yeah.
And so,
3, the answer's 3.
And so then I applied, and I said, God, if you want me to do it, I'll be accepted. And if not, I know it's 6 months, and that 3 might be something else.
Yeah.
And I got accepted, so I'll be doing that. And then starting September, backtrack a little bit, I have decided and really prayed and felt called to missions for the next few years. So I'll be doing that for 3 years is my commitment. I'm open to more. But going into September, I'll be going into a secondary school is what they call it. It's called Foundations for Revival and Reformation. And it's 3 months of Bible, just really diving deep in the Bible. And even the first week we read Genesis to Revelation from like out loud in 1 week, you know.
Oh wow.
And you'll be like, what is the significance of that? But like people like,
I know a lot of people who've been Christians for a long time and never read the whole Bible all the way through.
it's crazy, but like in that short of time.
Even in a week, you literally have to be going 24/7. I feel like to be able to do that. That's not easy.
And because you do it in groups too, like you have to do it out loud.
Wow.
And one guy I know, his voice, like he sounded like a smoker.
Okay.
He always had.
Raspy.
He hadn't smoked.
Yeah.
He was healed. Like he's like, let me just try reading, you know. And he started reading, and his voice was like unlocked, and it was crazy. This just happened this past September.
Wow.
And so those are the first 3 months, and then the second 3 months is spheres of worldview. So looking at education, politics, all these things, and how to biblically apply yourself in those areas. And then the last 3 months is apologetics and communication. So how do you effectively communicate what you learned, the background biblically, all
what you
of the
believe,
things.
yeah, all that stuff.
Asking those big questions of Gen Z. And then there's 1 month of outreach. So that's what I'm going into, because I really felt from the Lord to go into a time of like being poured into myself, because you can't just automatically become like a really cool disciple or, you know, anything like that. I can't disciple people if I haven't been poured into myself. And so to pour out, you need to be poured into. And I also felt the Lord wants me to be like in true friendship with him, in the sense of none of my friends are doing this. Like YWAM friends are doing this.
So it's you alone again.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
A lot of them are doing like staffing a DTS, which is what I'd want to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's not my life. It's God's, you know?
Yeah.
And so just finding true friendship in him and just relying on him and not going with everyone that I would love to go with and run with. Because my season for that might be in the future.
Yeah. Or it might shift and change as you're in it.
Yeah.
You know? You don't know.
I have no idea.
It sounds like you're just following what you feel like God's trying to tell you to do, and it's going to be the best for you.
It is. And there's so many unknowns, because I'm giving up a lot of control and I'm just trusting him, which is another thing I need to work on. So it's going to be great. And I'm very excited. Anyone is welcome to come visit me.
That's cool. In Kona.
In Kona.
Yeah.
We have a little like visitor place on campus. That's great.
Cool. I had a buddy who, his friend did YWAM or was connected, and they stayed there a couple months ago. And he was telling me about it on Kona, and we were chatting about it. He's like, dude, it was so sweet. He's not a non-Christian.
No way.
He went with his buddy who was a Christian. He's like, dude, the people there were so great. He was just telling me all about this stuff.
It's amazing.
And so I'm like, that's so sweet. Yeah. It's very cool that they allow that and open that up if you are aware of it. It's like a little hidden gem, I'm sure.
It really is.
That's so cool.
Best thing about Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, I just want to encourage you, Amanda. You're doing hard things now that are going to pay off massively in the future.
Thank you.
And so the fact that you're caring about discipline and this stuff now is just like, it's this. The things you're learning now are going to be things that it's like. Let me say it like this. Are you familiar with chickenpox?
Oh, yeah.
If you have it when you're younger, it's not as bad. But if you have chickenpox later in life, it's called shingles, and it's horrible.
10 times worse.
And you're learning discipline now, and it's in a really good place to do that. And then learning discipline later is way harder.
It is.
And so it's cool that you're setting that up now. So I just want to encourage you in that.
Thank you.
You've got a newsletter, right? Or a website?
I have a website.
Okay.
amandamade.co.
Okay.
So just don't put the com at the end.
CO.
CO. And then I have a newsletter that you can subscribe to on that website. Everything's there. I have some. Basically, how I do it is I send out my newsletter every month, and then a week after that's sent out, it's put on my website for those people that might miss it. And it's a really easy place to just archive everything.
Yeah.
And there'll be updates and all those fun things. There's ways to give and also to be on my prayer team as well.
Very cool. So that's all. Say it one more time.
AmandaMade.co.
AmandaMade.co. I'll put it in the show notes too, so anyone can go and click and look at it and stuff. And if you're listening and you've been touched by this, go ahead and go look and really think about supporting Amanda. So I'll give that plug. You don't have to say it. I'll say it.
There's so many ways you can support me too, and just even meeting with me. I would love to meet any of you.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Any last words? Anything else you want to say before we end this?
God is real. He's the best, and his plan is perfect.
Cool. All right, we'll end on that. Till next time, folks. And we're going to have you back on in a year or two when you're...
Let's do it.
3 years, however. So
sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
See ya.
See ya.